My name is Joshua Anderson, and this is the story of how one wedding night unraveled 8 years of marriage and revealed secrets I never saw coming. But before I tell you about that devastating evening, you need to understand how perfectly orchestrated everything had been from the very beginning. I met Gloria Patterson in our junior year at Northwestern University in Chicago. She was studying accounting, I was in business management. It was one of those classic college romance stories. We met at a party, talked until sunrise, and I knew she was the one before she even gave me her number. Gloria had this infectious laugh that could light up any room, auburn hair that caught the sunlight perfectly, and these piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through you. What made our relationship unique was that Gloria came with a package deal. Marcus Thompson had been her best friend since they were 7 years old, growing up in the same neighborhood in Detroit. They'd been through everything together: middle school awkwardness, high school heartbreaks, college applications. When I started dating Gloria, Marcus was automatically part of my life too. Marcus was everything I wasn't. Where I was analytical and methodical, he was spontaneous and charismatic. I stood 5 feet 9 inches with an average build and thinning brown hair, while Marcus towered at 6 feet 3 inches with the kind of athletic physique that came from years of playing college basketball and later working as a personal trainer. He had this easy confidence that drew people to him, especially women. But Gloria always insisted he was like a brother to her, and I believed it. Why wouldn't I? After graduation, we all stayed in Chicago. I landed a job at Morrison Logistics, a mid-sized shipping company where I worked my way up to operations manager. Gloria got hired at Brennan & Associates, a prestigious law firm downtown, handling their corporate accounts. Marcus opened his own fitness studio in Lincoln Park and quickly built a loyal following. We got married 3 years after graduation in a beautiful ceremony at Holy Name Cathedral. Marcus was my best man, which felt natural given how close he was to both of us. Our wedding photos show all 3 of us laughing, celebrating what felt like the beginning of a perfect life. For the next 5 years, everything seemed ideal. Gloria and I bought a house in Evanston, a charming 2-story colonial with a white picket fence that screamed American dream. I got promoted twice, Gloria made partner track at her firm, and we talked about starting a family. Marcus remained our closest friend, joining us for dinners, vacations, and holidays. He dated occasionally, but never seemed to find anyone who stuck around long. "Don't worry about Marcus," Gloria would say whenever I mentioned his perpetual bachelor status. "He's just picky. When he finds the right person, he'll settle down." Looking back now, I realize there were signs I missed. Small things that seemed innocent at the time, but take on a different meaning when you know the truth. Like how Gloria always answered Marcus's calls immediately, even when we were in the middle of dinner or watching a movie. "It might be important," she'd say, stepping into the other room. Or how Marcus had a key to our house for emergencies, but seemed to use it more often than necessary, sometimes letting himself in when I was at work to borrow something or wait for Gloria to get home. There were the inside jokes between them that I never quite understood, conversations that would suddenly stop when I entered the room, and the way they seemed to communicate without words sometimes, sharing glances that felt like they were speaking a private language. But the biggest red flag I ignored was Gloria's phone. She'd always been casual about leaving it around, but about 6 months before the wedding incident, she started guarding it like state secrets. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and if I ever asked to use it for something simple, like checking the weather when mine was dead, she'd find an excuse to do it herself. "My phone's been acting weird lately," she'd say. "Better if you use your own." I rationalized everything away. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. People develop habits, relationships evolve. I trusted Gloria completely, and that trust made me blind to what was happening right under my nose. The wedding that changed everything belonged to Sarah Mitchell and Tom Rodriguez. Sarah worked with Gloria at Brennan & Associates, and Tom was a client who'd become a friend through several business deals I'd handled. They were getting married at the Riverside Country Club, an exclusive venue about 40 minutes outside Chicago, nestled along the Fox River with sprawling gardens and a grand ballroom that cost more than most people's cars. The invitation had come 3 months earlier, and Gloria seemed unusually excited about it. She spent weeks shopping for the perfect dress, finally settling on a navy blue cocktail dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. She made appointments at an expensive salon for her hair and nails, bought new jewelry, and even splurged on designer shoes. "It's Sarah's big day," she explained when I commented on all the preparation. I want to look perfect for her. The morning of the wedding, Gloria was up early, spending hours getting ready. She looked absolutely stunning when she finally emerged from our bedroom. Her hair swept up in an elegant updo, makeup flawlessly applied, wearing that navy dress that made her green eyes pop like emeralds. "You look incredible," I told her, and I meant it. Even after 8 years together, she could still take my breath away. "Thank you, baby," she said, kissing my cheek carefully to avoid smudging her lipstick. "You don't look too bad yourself." I'd rented a tuxedo for the occasion. Nothing too fancy, just a classic black suit with a bow tie. Standing next to Gloria, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. We arrived at the country club at 3 p.m. for the 4 o'clock ceremony. The venue was breathtaking, white roses and baby's breath everywhere, a string quartet playing classical music, and guests in their finest attire mingling on the terrace overlooking the river. Marcus was already there when we arrived, looking sharp in a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and athletic build. He was talking to a group of people I didn't recognize, but when he saw us, he immediately broke away from his conversation. "Joshua, Gloria, you both look fantastic," he said, giving me a firm handshake and Gloria a hug that seemed to last a beat longer than necessary. "This place is incredible, isn't it?" "It's beautiful," Gloria agreed, and I noticed she was looking at Marcus rather than the scenery when she said it. "I got here early to help with some last-minute setup," Marcus continued. "Sarah was freaking out about the flower arrangements, so I moved a few things around for her." That was Marcus, always helpful, always there when people needed him. It was one of the qualities that made him such a good friend, though I was beginning to wonder if his helpfulness extended beyond friendship when it came to my wife. The ceremony itself was gorgeous. Sarah looked radiant in her white gown. Tom couldn't stop smiling, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when they exchanged vows. I glanced over at Gloria during Tom's speech about loving someone so much that you can't imagine life without them, and saw tears streaming down her cheeks. "You okay?" I whispered. "It's just so beautiful," she whispered back, squeezing my hand. "It reminds me of our wedding day." For a moment, all my doubts melted away. This was my wife, the woman I'd loved for 8 years, crying happy tears at a friend's wedding. Maybe I'd been imagining things. Maybe the stress from work was making me paranoid. After the ceremony, cocktail hour began on the terrace. The October weather was perfect, crisp but not cold, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees. A jazz quartet had replaced the string ensemble, playing upbeat standards while servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I was talking to Tom's brother about the Cubs' chances next season when I realized I'd lost track of Gloria. Scanning the crowd, I spotted her near the gardens, deep in conversation with Marcus. They were standing close together, closer than friends typically do, and Gloria was laughing at something he'd said, that infectious laugh I'd fallen in love with years ago. "Excuse me," I told Tom's brother, and made my way over to them. "Hey honey," Gloria said when she saw me approaching. "Marcus was just telling me about this crazy client he has who insists on doing yoga poses during his training sessions." "Sounds interesting," I replied, though I noticed Marcus seemed less animated now that I was there. "Mind if I steal my wife for a minute? I want to introduce her to some people from work." "Of course," Marcus said, flashing that easy smile. "I'll catch up with you both later." As we walked away, I felt Gloria's hand slip into mine, but she glanced back at Marcus once before focusing on the corporate executives I wanted her to meet. Dinner was announced at 6:30, and we found our assigned table near the dance floor. The venue had outdone itself: crystal chandeliers, white linens, centerpieces that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. Sarah and Tom sat at the head table, glowing with happiness, while their families and wedding party surrounded them. Marcus was seated at a table across the room with some of Sarah's work colleagues. Throughout dinner, I kept catching him looking in our direction, though he'd quickly turn away when our eyes met. The meal was excellent: filet mignon with truffle sauce, lobster tail, roasted vegetables that were perfectly seasoned. Gloria barely touched her food, claiming she was too excited to eat, but I noticed she drank quite a bit of wine. Not enough to get drunk, but more than usual. "This is such a beautiful wedding," she said for the third time, twirling her wine glass between her fingers. "Everything is so perfect." "It is," I agreed, "though not as perfect as our wedding was." She smiled at me, but it seemed forced somehow. "Of course not. Ours was magical." After dinner, the band took the stage and announced the first dance. Sarah and Tom moved to the center of the dance floor, and At Last by Etta James began playing. They swayed together, lost in their own world, while everyone watched and smiled. "Remember our first dance?" I asked Gloria, taking her hand. "The way you look tonight," she said softly. "You stepped on my dress during the dip, and you laughed instead of getting mad. It was perfect because it was us." When the song ended, the band invited other couples to join the newlyweds. I led Gloria onto the dance floor, and for a few minutes, it felt like old times. We moved together naturally, her body fitting perfectly against mine, her perfume, the same Chanel No. 5 she'd worn on our wedding day, bringing back memories of happier times. But then the song ended, and Marcus appeared beside us. "Mind if I cut in?" he asked, already extending his hand toward Gloria. I wanted to say no. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to keep my wife close, to not let this man touch her. But we were in public, at a friend's wedding, and saying no would have caused a scene. "Sure," I said, stepping back. "Just save me another dance, beautiful." Gloria smiled and took Marcus's hand, and I watched as he pulled her closer than I was comfortable with. They began moving to a slow jazz number, their bodies fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. I retreated to the bar and ordered a whiskey, top shelf neat. The bartender, a young guy with carefully styled hair and a practiced smile, poured generously. "Nice wedding," he commented. "Yeah, beautiful," I replied, but my eyes were on the dance floor. Marcus and Gloria were dancing like they'd done it 1,000 times before. He spun her effortlessly, caught her in perfect dips, and whispered things in her ear that made her laugh. Other guests had stopped their own dancing to watch them. They looked that good together. I ordered another whiskey. The songs changed from jazz to swing to contemporary, but Marcus and Gloria kept dancing. I checked my watch. They'd been out there for 45 minutes. Other couples had come and gone, but they remained, lost in their own world. "Your wife's a beautiful dancer," said a voice beside me. I turned to see an elderly gentleman in an expensive suit, smoking a cigar. "Thank you," I said. "Been together long, those two?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "That's her friend," I clarified. "I'm her husband." The man looked confused for a moment, then embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed. They look so natural together." I finished my second whiskey in one gulp and ordered a third. By the time Gloria and Marcus finally left the dance floor, I was well on my way to drunk. They were both slightly breathless, laughing about something, and Gloria's hair had come loose from its updo, giving her a tousled, intimate look that made my stomach clench. "That was amazing," she said, sliding into her chair beside me. "Marcus is such a good dancer. Remember that class we all took together sophomore year?" I didn't remember any dance class. "When was that?" "Oh, you were studying for midterms that week. Marcus and I went by ourselves." Another detail I'd never heard before. How many other things had they done together that I didn't know about? The evening continued with more dancing, more drinks, and more opportunities for me to watch my wife with another man. Marcus asked her to dance 3 more times, and each time she accepted eagerly. When she danced with me, it felt obligatory, like she was just being polite. Around 10 p.m., I went to the restroom to splash some water on my face and try to sober up a little. The whiskey was hitting harder than usual, probably because I'd barely eaten dinner. In the mirror, I looked like hell, hair disheveled, tie crooked, eyes bloodshot. "Get it together, Joshua," I muttered to my reflection. "You're being paranoid." But when I came back out, Gloria and Marcus were nowhere to be seen. I searched the main ballroom, the terrace, the bar area. Finally, I asked Tom if he'd seen them. "I think I saw Gloria heading outside for some air," he said. "Marcus might have gone with her. You know how he looks after her." "Yes," I thought grimly. "I know exactly how he looks after her." I made my way outside, checking the front entrance, the gardens, the parking area. The country club was large, with multiple buildings and outdoor spaces, and it took me several minutes to cover all the obvious locations. That's when I decided to circle around to the back of the main building, where the service entrance and loading dock were located. It was darker back there, away from the wedding festivities, quiet except for the distant sound of music and laughter. And there they were. Gloria was pressed against the brick wall beside the service door, Marcus's hands on either side of her face, their bodies close together in the shadows. They were talking in low, urgent whispers, but I couldn't make out the words from where I stood, hidden behind a maintenance shed about 30 feet away. Then Marcus leaned down and kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek. Not a congratulatory hug between old friends. A real kiss, passionate, desperate, the kind of kiss between lovers who'd been apart too long. And Gloria kissed him back. My world tilted on its axis. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of trust and love and shared dreams, and there was my wife kissing another man like her life depended on it. I stood there frozen, watching them. Part of me wanted to charge over there, to confront them, to demand answers. But another part of me, the part that was still thinking clearly despite the whiskey, knew I needed more information before I acted. They broke apart after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. Marcus said something that made Gloria nod, then they separated, heading back toward the building from different directions. Gloria went around the left side of the building toward the main entrance, while Marcus took the right side toward the terrace. I waited until they were both out of sight, then made my own way back to the ballroom, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Were they in love? Was Gloria planning to leave me? Had our entire marriage been a lie? When I got back to our table, Gloria was already there, touching up her lipstick with a small compact mirror. She looked perfectly composed, as if nothing had happened. "There you are," she said, smiling at me. "I was wondering where you'd gone." "Just getting some air," I replied, studying her face for any sign of guilt or deception. "You?" "Same. It's getting pretty warm in here with all the dancing." She was lying so easily, so naturally, that I wondered how many other times she'd lied to me over the years. How many late nights at work, or girls' nights out, or emergency calls from Marcus had actually been secret meetings with her lover. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I kept drinking, trying to numb the pain and shock of what I'd witnessed. Gloria danced with Marcus twice more, and each time I wanted to scream at everyone in the room. "Don't you see what's happening? Don't you see that my wife is in love with another man?" But I said nothing. I smiled when appropriate, made small talk with other guests, and played the role of the happy husband while inside I was dying. Around midnight, the band announced that they'd be taking a break before their final set. That's when the DJ took over and invited people to make toasts to the happy couple. Sarah's maid of honor went first, telling a funny story about how Sarah had practiced her wedding vows in the mirror for weeks. Tom's best man followed with a heartfelt speech about friendship and love. Several family members took their turns, each toast getting more emotional and wine-soaked than the last. I wasn't planning to speak. I'd had too much to drink, and I was afraid of what might come out of my mouth. But then the DJ announced, "We have one more toast from Joshua Anderson." I looked up, confused. I hadn't asked to speak, but everyone was looking at me expectantly, including Gloria, who seemed surprised but pleased. "Go on, honey," she said, squeezing my arm. "Say something nice." I stood up slowly, the room spinning slightly from the whiskey. Someone handed me a microphone, and suddenly I was standing in front of 150 people with no idea what I was going to say. "Thank you," I began, my voice sounding strange and distant through the sound system. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but sometimes life gives you moments when you have to tell the truth. The room grew quiet. Sarah and Tom smiled at me from the head table, expecting words of wisdom about love and marriage. "Sarah and Tom," I continued, looking at the happy couple, "you're starting a beautiful journey together. Marriage is about trust, about faithfulness, about being honest with each other even when it's difficult." I glanced at Gloria, who was watching me with growing concern. Across the room, Marcus had gone pale. "But sometimes," I said, my voice getting stronger, "people aren't honest. Sometimes people make promises they don't keep. Sometimes the person you trust most in the world betrays that trust." The atmosphere in the room was shifting. People were looking uncomfortable, sensing that this wasn't going where they expected. "Joshua," Gloria said quietly, but the microphone picked it up. "Maybe you should sit down." "No," I said, looking directly at her. "I think it's time for the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to propose a toast. Not just to Sarah and Tom, but to new beginnings. Because I think we might be able to have another wedding right here tonight." The room was dead silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. "My dear wife Gloria," I said, my voice echoing through the ballroom, "would you like to marry your friend Marcus? Because it seems like you're already acting like his wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gloria's face drained of all color. Marcus stood up from his table, looking like he wanted to run. "I saw you," I continued, the words pouring out now like water through a broken dam. "Behind the building. Kissing like teenagers. So why don't we make it official? Why don't we stop pretending?" "Joshua, stop," Gloria said, standing up, tears starting to flow. "Please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut her off. "I understand that my marriage has been a lie. I understand that while I've been working to build a life for us, you've been building a different kind of relationship with my best friend. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Sarah was crying, Tom looked mortified, and several people were pulling out their phones to record what was happening. So here's to honesty, I said, raising my champagne glass. Here's to people showing their true colors. And here's to me finally seeing what's been right in front of my face for God knows how long. I drained the champagne in one gulp, set the microphone down on the table, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Gloria calling my name, hear the chaos of 150 wedding guests trying to process what had just happened. I didn't look back. I drove home that night probably more drunk than I should have, but I made it safely to our house in Evanston. The house that suddenly felt like a stranger's home, filled with memories that might have been lies. I sat in my living room until dawn, drinking coffee and trying to piece together the timeline of my wife's affair. When had it started? How had I missed it? What did this mean for our future? Gloria came home around 8 a.m., her makeup ruined, her dress wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. She found me in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "Joshua," she said quietly, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I asked without looking at her. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "How long you've been cheating on me. How many times you've lied to my face. How many times I've been the fool who trusted you." She sat down across from me at our kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten breakfast together thousands of times, where we'd planned our future, where we'd talked about having children someday. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus and I, we've always been close, you know that. But about 6 months ago, things changed." 6 months. That explained the phone guarding, the late nights, the distance I'd felt growing between us. "I never meant to hurt you," she continued. "I love you, Joshua. I do. But what I feel for Marcus, it's different. It's something I've fought against for years, but it's always been there." "Years?" The word came out like a croak. "Since college," she admitted. "Maybe even before that. But we both knew it was wrong. We both tried to ignore it. When you and I got together, I thought those feelings would go away. And they did, mostly. Until what? Until Marcus's father died in March. Do you remember? You were traveling for work that week, the big Morrison account in Denver. Marcus was devastated, and I went to comfort him, and I remembered. Marcus's father had had a sudden heart attack. I'd wanted to come home for the funeral, but Gloria had insisted I stay and handle the business deal. "I'll take care of Marcus," she'd said. "You focus on work." Now I knew exactly how she'd taken care of him. "So you've been having an affair for 6 months, I said flatly. "It's not just an affair," she said, tears streaming down her face again. "I know how that sounds, but it's not just physical. We're in love, Joshua. We've been in love for years, and we finally admitted it. In love." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Are you leaving me for him?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Finally she nodded. "I can't keep living this lie," she whispered. "It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservations. And I deserve to be with the person I've loved my whole life." I felt strangely calm hearing this, like a fever breaking. The uncertainty was over. The wondering and suspecting and doubting could end. I knew the truth now. "I'll pack a bag and stay at a hotel tonight," she continued. "We can figure out the details later. The house, the finances, all of that. I'll make this as easy as possible for you." "How considerate," I said. She flinched at my tone. "Joshua, I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to. But someday, I hope you'll understand that this doesn't mean our marriage was meaningless. We had good years together. Real love, even if it wasn't complete." "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. Pack your things and get out. Don't stay at a hotel. Go to Marcus. Go to the man you love. Just get out of my sight." She stood up slowly, like an old woman. "I'll get my things." I heard her moving around upstairs, opening drawers, zipping suitcases. It took her about an hour to pack 8 years of marriage into 3 bags and a few boxes. When she came back downstairs, I was still sitting at the kitchen table. "I've left my key on the counter," she said. "And Joshua, I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry." I didn't respond. I heard the front door open and close, heard her car start and pull out of the driveway. Then I was alone in the house we'd bought together, surrounded by the life we'd built together, facing a future I'd never imagined. The next few weeks passed in a strange haze. I called in sick to work for 3 days, then threw myself into my job with an intensity that worried my colleagues. I hired a divorce attorney, The best one I could find, a woman named Patricia Kellerman, who had a reputation for being ruthless but fair. "Do you want to fight the divorce?" she asked during our first meeting. "No," I said. "I want it over as quickly as possible. But I want what's mine." The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. Gloria didn't contest anything. We split our assets down the middle, sold the house, and divided the proceeds. She moved in with Marcus, who had quietly closed his fitness studio and found a job at a corporate gym chain. Apparently, the scandal had hurt his business. Word travels fast in the fitness community, and cheating with a married client's wife was bad for one's professional reputation. I moved to Austin 6 months after that horrible wedding night. Morrison Logistics had an office there that needed a new operations manager, and my boss was happy to transfer me. Fresh start, new city, no memories of Gloria and Marcus around every corner. The day I left Chicago, I drove past Holy Name Cathedral, where Gloria and I had been married. I thought about that young couple who'd stood at the altar 8 years earlier, full of hope and love and dreams for the future. I wondered what I would have told that young man if I'd known what was coming. Maybe I would have told him to pay more attention to the signs. Maybe I would have warned him not to trust so completely, not to assume that shared history meant shared loyalty. Or maybe I would have told him that some lessons can only be learned through experience, no matter how much they hurt. Austin turned out to be exactly what I needed. The city was growing rapidly, full of energy and opportunity. I bought a small house in South Austin, joined a hiking club, took up photography, and slowly began to rebuild my life. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious, but it felt good to remember that there were other women in the world, women who might be interested in an honest relationship with a man who understood the value of fidelity. About a year after the move, I got a Facebook message from Tom Rodriguez, the groom from that fateful wedding. "Hey Joshua," it read. "Sarah and I have been thinking about you. We heard you moved to Texas. We wanted you to know that what happened at our wedding wasn't your fault. We're actually grateful that you spoke up when you did. It was brave and it was honest. We hope you're doing well." I wrote back thanking them for their kindness and mentioned that I hoped the rest of their wedding had been salvageable. Tom's response surprised me. Actually, after everyone got over the initial shock, people started saying it was the most memorable wedding they'd ever been to. Sarah's grandmother said it was better than a soap opera. We laugh about it now. Our marriage is stronger than ever, maybe partly because we saw firsthand what happens when people aren't honest with each other. 2 years after the divorce was final, I was having coffee at a local cafe in Austin when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus's name. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Marcus," I said. "Joshua." His voice was older, somehow tired. "I hope it's okay that I called. I got your number from your old boss at Morrison. What do you want?" I wanted to apologize. I know it's too little too late, but I needed to say it. What Gloria and I did to you was unforgivable. You were my friend, and I betrayed that friendship in the worst possible way. I waited for him to continue. "I also wanted you to know that Gloria and I, we're not together anymore. We haven't been for about 6 months now." That surprised me. What happened? Turns out that love based on deception and betrayal isn't as strong as we thought it would be. We tried to make it work, but we could never get past the guilt. Every time we looked at each other, we remembered what we'd done to you. It poisoned everything. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. I didn't wish unhappiness on either of them, despite everything. Gloria wanted me to tell you she's sorry too. She's moved back to Detroit, living with her sister. She started therapy, trying to understand why she did what she did. She knows she doesn't deserve your forgiveness, but she wanted you to know she's sorry anyway. Thank you for telling me. Are you happy, Joshua? Are you doing okay? I thought about my life in Austin. My work, which I enjoyed more than I had in years. My small house with the garden I was slowly learning to tend. The hiking club and the photography classes, and the quiet satisfaction of building something new from the ashes of something old. "Yes," I said. "I am. I'm glad. You deserved better than what we gave you." After we hung up, I sat in the cafe for a long time, thinking about that conversation. Part of me had expected to feel vindicated, hearing that their relationship had fallen apart. But instead, I felt something like peace. The truth was, I had been happy with Gloria, genuinely happy for most of our 8 years together. The fact that she'd fallen in love with someone else didn't erase the good times we'd had. And the fact that their relationship had ultimately failed didn't make what they'd done to me any less wrong, but it also didn't make my recovery any less real. I'd learned something valuable from the whole experience. that you can survive betrayal, that you can rebuild your life, and that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can ultimately lead to something better. That evening, I drove out to Lake Travis to photograph the sunset, something I'd been doing regularly since moving to Austin. As I set up my camera equipment, I thought about that wedding toast 2.5 years earlier, the moment when I'd decided to tell the truth instead of swallowing the lie. It had been messy and public, and probably not the most mature way to handle the situation. But it had been honest. And in the end, honesty, painful as it was, had set me free. As I watched the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been impossible to imagine, I realized that this was what happiness looked like for me now. Not the desperate, clinging happiness of trying to hold on to something that was already lost, but the quiet, steady happiness of someone who had learned to build a life based on truth. The camera clicked, capturing another beautiful moment in a life that had turned out very differently from what I'd planned, but was beautiful in its own unexpected way. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video, there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.